Anyway, but I mean, one thing, I think you as catechists are gifted in that way to have the grace and the insight, and most of you are parents, to know, what to say. And, and if they ask you questions that require a strong answer, then say it. No, don't be afraid to, because you go there in the name of Christ. And that requires, faithfulness to his teaching.
I asked the question simply because, you've told us the Greek about some other words, which really, I think, have been far more satisfactory than what we're getting in the English. Righteous, for example, I think, rather than just.
Look,
they're a lot words.
They're nuances, but they're still,
And the Greek sounds. I wish we all spoke Greek.
Well, no, I don't speak Greek. I don't speak it. I just read it. But it's really, look, it's a privilege to know it. But that's when then scholars should be bringing that out. The Jerusalem Bible is the Bible version I know best, and it's a good version, but it's also a bit sloppy on some translations. The New American Bible is more accurate, more literal, and a few others as well. The worst version, or one of the worst, is the New Jerusalem, the Good News Bible. Is a very sloppy translation. I know you probably use those versions with the children, but you're not going to go into the Greek and all that with the children. That's for you. You had a question.
I've only been, this is only my second year as a catechist. And
Good on you.
Thank you. But I feel we have to tread carefully because of being politically correct, and because we only have the children for half an hour each week. If they go home and start talking to mum, dad or whoever about hell, and this is what they were talking to us, because I worked in a school for 27 years, parents are just so sensitive about things that back up to the office straight away saying, they can't tell my child about that, it's scaring them.
Okay.
So we have to be very careful.
Sure, and I mean, we have reached a stage where it's like a frenzy almost, where the political correctness is not just political correctness, it's also about a hypersensitivity that is really locked in a profound blindness as
and
well.
we're not helping the children.
And absolutely we're not helping the children. What it is, it's more about it says more about the adults than it says about the children. That being said though, we still have to be faithful to the truth and to the whole truth, presented in a way that the children will understand. Those children who will, and the parents will come and say those things about children, will at various points, if not by their own parents, it maybe hear the word "go to hell," and so they're going to hear the word regardless. And some of them, I mean, these are probably not the parents that are coming up to complain so much, but there's all sorts of bad example in their home. There's all sorts of bad examples about married life, whether it's is your father, is he dad, or is the boyfriend the Mr. Right Now for your mother? There's all these sorts of situations, and I take your point that you are in a particularly delicate area. I'm in another delicate area, but it just means we need to be prudent. But prudence doesn't mean watering it down, but it means treading carefully so that we say the truth. And choosing words carefully there's nothing wrong with that, and it means that we can convey the message more wholesomely and effectively. So and I mean that's where there's all sorts of resources too, and coaching and all that. That's a very important part. And I know some schools, some principals are very welcoming of catechists, and others there's a clear anti-religious sentiment there, and it's their own, and unfortunately that's part of the web that we're caught up in our culture at the moment. Any other questions?
When I first started doing scripture, which was 20-something years ago,
Only 20 years plus.
Yeah,
Just seems
in the
that
badge here.
Yeah. Well, it hasn't given you any grey hairs. That's good. So no, don't mean that too.
No, but we were told to just say that it was God's choice what happened to your dad or whatever. That's up to God to make that choice.
Okay. Well, it's.
And I think that leaves it open that, you know, like their dads might say they don't believe, but their dad might be a great man and does all sorts of work and
Exactly.
and you know, for the little kids to reconcile that and say yes, he's going to go to hell or he's going to be condemned. I mean, I'd never use those words, but I would just say, if I know your dad doesn't believe, maybe he'll change his mind.
Exactly.
But it's also up to God to make up his mind what happens.
But
And that, I mean, because I do believe that. That, you know, like, and then you might sort of go, well, I've been good all my life. But, and, you know, and I go to heaven and they do too. You know, that could well be able to happen, hey?
after a little bit of purification, maybe too.
Well,
I mean,
yes, and that little bit of purification could be, you know, sort of, well, I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, whether you know, come back as a dog or something.
No, that's reincarnation. That's a
Buddha-
Buddhist or a Hindu
I
teaching.
won't go, I
Yeah.
won't go there, but, you know, like I just think that we don't know what's going to happen to us after we die and what
Okay.
and how God's going to make that decision. And I can't make that decision.
And that's the point you're really
And I
making.
can't weigh up that dad.
And
or
it's
that
not
mum
your
or-
it's not your point to make. It's not your place or mine to make that decision.
Yeah.
So I think what you're trying to say to the child is, God is the one who has to judge your father. But I think it's also important to say, just as you talk to the child, you have a choice to make in your life, so does your father have a choice to make in his life. And what God does with us has something to do with what we choose. And I know what you're trying to say, to avoid putting the child's conscience in some sort of awkward situation. But I think we have to find ways of revealing certain things to children delicately, in a way that they can understand, and we leave certain other things for their own conclusions as they mature and get older. But one thing that I think is actually counterproductive is when we give answers to children that are actually not quite true, and then they're only going to have to find out 5 years later and say, but my catechist teacher told me before that it was this and not that, when they finally discover the truth. So whenever I get asked, whether it's even a 15-year-old, and they ask me a question that I know I can't answer, or I can answer it, but they can't understand the answer for it, I say to them, look, I'm going to tell you this now, but there's actually a lot more that I need to tell you, but I want you to ask this question again to another priest or someone who knows this 5 years from now, 10 years from now, so that they know that there's still more to the answer for their question, but what I've told them is just the beginning. And then they're usually satisfied, you know. They might ask some other questions that I could give them more details with, you know. And in the end, look, you make your best judgment, as I was saying last time about conscience, and you go with it, you know. And then if you make a mistake, you learn from it, but, you know, after 20 years, I assume you've picked up a few things. So.
Oh, I don't go there. I don't go where Anne goes.
Yeah, but
that's what I say. I just say that's God's decision. You know,
Yeah.
leave that. That's.
But that's
I'm
what
I'm not talking about things that I don't know about myself.
and it's true, you don't know about that, but I'm inviting you to also put a spotlight and say, Dad's choice has something with it. So in other words, we don't know how God will judge your dad. That's what you're trying to say. But to let the child know that just as the child, has a decision, so does the father. And then the child, with that answer, goes maybe to the father later on saying, Dad, I want to go to heaven. What do you want to do? And there will be a conversation, maybe. The father might dismiss the child and say, I don't believe in all that sort of stuff. But my catechist teacher says that God is there and he will. You see, and oftentimes the father needs to hear that from his children, and so that the child can actually challenge the parent. We get some of these parents actually coming back, not often, coming back when through the sacramental programs. And I mean, I don't make no bones about it when I have a information night for parents, confirmation, first communion, first confession. I say primarily, this is about you, not about your children. You are presenting your children here. So, you know, and I just say, and if you're not yet ready in your own faith to be involved with the regular Sunday Mass, you've got to be honest to where you are, and it's okay to delay the sacrament for your child for a year or two until you are in such a place where you are coming to Mass every Sunday or nearly every Sunday, and then you will feel this is actually something important that you want to pass on to your child.
And do you see a change?
In some of them, I've had some say to me, you know, Father, after your talk, we're not ready yet to do that, so we're going to delay it for. And I actually thank them for their courage and their integrity.
So at the moment at St. John's we're doing First Communion, and it was Commitment Sunday last
Yes.
Sunday.
Yes.
And of course they come out of the woodwork.
Of
And
course.
We have a children's liturgy. Normally when we have a children's liturgy we might have 10 children.
Yes.
I think there were 30 last Sunday.
Yep. Yep.
And when I've done children's liturgy at this time, quite often we have 45 children. Then once communion's finished or whatever sacrament, we get back to the basic 10 children again.
Exactly, to basic. So,
Yeah.
and this is where I think all of us together, priests and catechists and pastoral associates and bishops, we need to have a clear presentation of what we're doing, and also to free up the parents from, because many of them come because they feel that there's a hoop that they've got to jump through. And this is really into our next talk on catechetics. So I'm going to have a little pause there, but I want to answer that question in more detail. So let's have a 30-second break. And
30 seconds.